There's a hidden valley just off the highway between Saint Peter and Mankato, and most of the cars rushing past never guess it is here. Step off the road and the ground falls away beneath you, down into a deep, forested ravine where a cold, clear creek runs over gravel and stone. This is 7 Mile Creek County Park, 628 acres of steep wooded slopes wrapped around one of the rarest kinds of water in this part of Minnesota, a wild trout stream. Around us, the maples and basswoods are turning to gold and flame, and the air smells of wet leaves and clean water. Come with me down the trail, and let me show you a valley carved by an Ice Age river and walked by people for thousands of years. We are in Nicollet County, in the south-central part of Minnesota, on the west side of the Great Minnesota River Valley. The park sits along Highway 169, about 4 miles south of the town of Saint Peter and 7 miles north of Mankato. It fills the deep, narrow valley that 7 Mile Creek has cut on its way down to the Minnesota River, a ribbon of protected forest in a landscape otherwise given over to farm fields. Nicollet County opened this place to the public in 2007, and today more than 8 miles of trails wind through its woods for hikers, bikers, and horseback riders. It is a working landscape of springs, forest, and stone, and the creek at the bottom is the reason it all exists. The trail drops quickly off the upland and into the shade of the trees. You can feel the temperature fall as you descend, the open warmth of the fields giving way to the cool, still air that pools in the bottom of the valley. Underfoot, the path is packed earth and root and fallen leaf, tilting steadily downward toward the sound of moving water. On either side, the slopes rise steeply, clothed in tall hardwoods whose trunks lean out over the ravine. Every step carries us deeper into a green, sheltered world that feels a long way from the highway just behind us. Seen from within, this valley is a deep gash of forest cut into the surrounding plain. The creek runs along its floor while wooded bluffs climb several hundred feet up on either hand, so steep in places that the trees seem to stand on top of one another. Botanists have mapped 3 distinct forest communities here, from floodplain woods of elm, basswood, and black ash down along the water, to slopes of red oak, sugar maple, and basswood higher up. This is a meeting place of 2 great natural regions, where the tallgrass prairie of the west brushes against the eastern hardwood forest. The result is a rich, layered woodland packed into a single narrow valley. And here at last is the creek itself. 7 Mile Creek runs clear and quick over a bed of clean gravel and cobble, curling from pool to riffle beneath overhanging branches. Kneel beside it and the water is startlingly cold, even on a mild October afternoon, and so clear you can count the pebbles on the bottom. In the sunlit shallows, you might catch the flick of a small fish holding steady against the current. This is not a muddy prairie stream, but something rarer and colder, and to understand why, we have to look at where its water comes from. Seven Mile Creek is a designated trout stream, and that is a genuinely unusual thing in south-central Minnesota. Most streams down here are warm and silty, but this one stays cold enough for brown trout, which need water below about 75 degrees to survive. The Department of Natural Resources stocks the creek each year with fingerling brown trout, and in its best stretches those fish grow to a foot or more, with some reaching 18 inches. They hold in the deeper pools and under cut banks, darting out to take insects washed down on the current. For anglers across the region, a wild, cold trout stream this close to home is a small miracle. Look closely at the water and you can see the clues to its coldness. It runs bright and untroubled even in low autumn flow, without the brown cloudiness of a warm weather stream. The steep gradient keeps it tumbling and aerated, breaking white over stones and gathering into glassy pools. That constant motion and that constant chill are gifts of the land itself, of the deep beds of sand and gravel stacked in these ancient valley walls. The secret to this creek lies not in the sky, but underground. The lower reaches of 7 Mile Creek flow all year long, and they do it because they are fed by springs. Rain and snowmelt sink into the porous sands and gravels of the valley, travel slowly underground, and then well back up into the creek bed as cold, clean groundwater. Because that water emerges at the steady temperature of the earth rather than the air, it keeps the stream cool through the heat of summer and ice-free through the depths of winter. These groundwater upwellings are the beating heart of the trout stream, the reason it can hold cold water fish at all. Without the springs, this would be just another warm and ordinary creek. The trail settles in beside the water and follows it downstream, crossing and recrossing on wooden footbridges. Walking here, you keep company with the creek, its voice rising and falling as it slides over gravel bars and drops through little rapids. The banks are green with ferns and moss where the springs seep out, and the trees lean close overhead, throwing dappled light across the surface. It is an easy, companionable kind of walking, the sort that invites you to slow down and simply listen. But the shape of this whole valley, so deep and so sudden, is the work of something far larger than a small creek. To explain this valley, we have to go back more than 10,000 years, to the end of the last ice age. As the great ice sheets melted, they left behind an enormous body of water in the north called Glacial Lake Agassiz, larger than all the Great Lakes combined. When that lake found its southern outlet, it drained through a colossal river the geologists call Glacial River Warren. Between roughly 13,000 and 10,000 years ago, that torrent poured across Minnesota, and it did not trickle, it raged. It was one of the largest rivers the continent has ever seen. Pause on the trail and look up at the walls of this valley, and you are looking at the handiwork of that lost river. The Minnesota River that flows below the park today is a modest, quiet stream, far too small to have dug the mile-wide trench it sits in. Geologists call such a stream underfoot, a small river inheriting a valley cut by a giant. Everywhere along this reach the land drops steeply from the flat farm country down to the river bottom, hundreds of feet below. 7 Mile Creek simply cut its own side canyon into that great inherited gorge. The valley that Glacial River Warren carved is a stupendous thing, running straight and broad across the whole of southern Minnesota. In places, it is up to 5 miles wide and more than 250 feet deep, a canyon on a scale the modern landscape can barely explain. Near Mankato, just south of here, the old river swung 90 degrees and deepened its channel even further before charging on toward the site of the Twin Cities. When the flood finally ceased, it left behind this vast empty trough, its floor now a patchwork of river, marsh, and woods. The Minnesota River Valley is, in effect, the ghost of a glacial flood. As 7 Mile Creek runs down toward that main valley, it has been busy cutting a deep ravine of its own. Because the Great Trough dropped the land so far and so fast, every little tributary creek had to carve steeply downward to reach the new river below. That steep drop is exactly what gives our creek its tumbling gradient and its clean gravel bed. It is also what makes these valley walls so tall and so sheer, and why the forest here feels so enclosed and secret. The whole park is really one long story of water cutting into ancient glacial sand. That same steepness comes with a cost, and it shapes the creek to this day. The soft glacial soils of these ravines wash away easily, and eroding side gullies have long been the main source of the sediment that clouds the water. In heavy rains, bare and unstable ravines can send tons of silt down into the stream, harming the very trout the creek is famous for. Understanding this has driven decades of careful work in the surrounding watershed, from grassy buffers to basins built to catch and slow the runoff. To protect the creek, you first have to protect the slopes that feed it. Climb a little away from the water and the forest changes character around you. Here on the well-drained slopes, the great trees are sugar maples and basswoods, their trunks tall and straight, their crowns knitting together into a high leafy roof. In summer, this canopy casts a deep, cool shade that keeps the forest floor open and dim beneath it. This kind of woodland has an old name in Minnesota, and it is worth knowing because it is one of the state's signature landscapes. It is the last of what the settlers once called the Big Woods. The maple and basswood forest that clothes these slopes is a remnant of the Big Woods, the dense band of hardwoods that once covered much of south-central Minnesota. Sugar maple and basswood are its master trees, so good at casting shade that their own seedlings and little else can grow up beneath them. Left undisturbed, such a forest renews itself in place for centuries, a stable and shadowy world of gray trunks and filtered green light. Most of the Big Woods was cleared long ago for farms, which is why surviving patches like this one matter so much. In a valley too steep to plow, the old forest was allowed to remain. And in the middle of October, that old forest puts on its greatest show. Look up and the canopy blazes overhead, the sugar maples flaring into gold and orange and scarlet against a cool blue sky. The basswoods turn a clear, soft yellow, and the oaks hold their deep bronze a little longer than the rest. With every gust of wind, a fresh scatter of leaves comes spinning down to settle on the trail. This is the week the Big Woods spends all year preparing for, a brief, brilliant farewell before winter. Autumn in a maple and basswood valley is a study in light as much as color. The low October sun slants in under the thinning canopy and sets the falling leaves aglow, so the whole ravine seems lit from within. Fallen leaves drift into the creek and ride the current in slow, bright flotillas downstream. On the forest floor, the color gathers in deep, rustling drifts that soften every footstep. It is a fleeting beauty, and a large part of why people come to this valley in the fall. Where the creek nears the bottom of the valley, the land finally flattens out into rich, low bottomland. Here the trail runs level through a different forest, one shaped by flood rather than shade. The soil is deep, dark alluvium, built up over ages from silt laid down by rising water. The trees stand a little more loosely, and the understory grows thick and green in the abundant moisture. This is Floodplain Forest, the woodland of the river's edge. Down on this valley floor grows a community of elm, basswood, and black ash, trees that can endure the wet feet and occasional flooding of the bottomlands. Where the sugar maples of the slopes crave good drainage, these lowland trees thrive in the damp, silty ground beside the water. In spring, the melt and the rains can push the creek and the nearby Minnesota River over their banks and spread a thin new layer of silt across the forest floor. The trees are built for it, and each flood renews the soil that feeds them. It is a forest that lives in partnership with the water, not in spite of it. Stand still on the trail for a moment, and the valley reveals how alive it is. White-tailed deer move through these woods at dawn and dusk, and red squirrels scold from the branches overhead. The park's varied habitats shelter a long list of birds, including more than a dozen species of special conservation concern. Down in the creek, the trout share the water with other fish, and the cold springs support small creatures found only in clean, cool streams. A deep, sheltered valley like this becomes a refuge, a green island of habitat in a sea of farmland. The animals here are drawn, in the end, to the same thing we are, the water and the shelter of the valley. Migrating birds follow the wooded river corridor like a highway in spring and fall, resting and feeding in the canopy. Deer and other mammals use the ravines as sheltered travel routes between the uplands and the river. The mix of prairie edge, hardwood slope, and floodplain packs an unusual variety of life into a small space. For thousands of years, people were part of that web of life as well. This whole valley is the homeland of the Dakota people, who lived here for countless generations before any European arrived. They call this land Mni Sota Makoce, the land where the waters reflect the skies, and it is the heart of their world. The Minnesota River was a great avenue of travel, of trade, and of gathering, and its wooded tributary valleys offered shelter, game, and clear springs. A cold creek like this one, in a sheltered wooded ravine, was exactly the kind of place people would have known and valued. To walk here is to walk through a landscape shaped by human presence far older than any farm or town. For the Dakota, the river valley was not wilderness but home, threaded with villages, camps, trails, and sacred places. Bands moved with the seasons through this country, hunting, fishing, gathering wild rice and maple sugar, and tending gardens on the terraces above the water. The confluences and crossings of the rivers were especially important, natural gathering points where people met to trade and to talk. Just downstream from this park lies one such place, a river crossing that has drawn people together for as long as anyone can remember. Its name is Traverse Des Sioux. A short way north of us, the Minnesota River runs shallow enough to wade, and there, for thousands of years, people crossed. The French who came later named the spot Traverse Des Sioux, the crossing of the Dakota, and it became a fixed landmark in the country. It was a meeting place and a market, a crossroads where trails and river routes came together. By the 1850s, a small settlement had grown up there, with missionaries, fur traders, voyageurs, and Dakota lodges gathered around the ford. It is a quiet, grassy place today, but it once stood at the center of events that reshaped this entire land. In the summer of 1851, Traverse Des Sioux became the setting for one of the most consequential meetings in Minnesota history. The United States government came to negotiate with the Sisseton and Wahpeton bands of the Upper Dakota, seeking their vast homeland for settlement. Tents and lodges spread across the river terrace as officials, traders, and hundreds of Dakota people gathered through the hot July days. The Commissioner of Indian Affairs, Luke Lee, and the territorial governor, Alexander Ramsey, spoke for the government. What they came to secure was a treaty, and the land it would transfer was almost beyond imagining. The treaty signed at Traverse Des Sioux on the 23rd of July, 1851, ceded some 21 million acres of Dakota land to the United States. That was much of southern and western Minnesota, together with land in what are now Iowa and South Dakota, handed over for about 7.5 cents an acre. In return, the Dakota were promised money, goods, and a narrow reservation strip along the Minnesota River. But as the leaders came forward to sign, they were also made to put their marks on a separate document, later called the Traders' Papers. It was a deception that would quietly siphon away much of what they had been promised. The promises made at Traverse Des Sioux were, for the most part, broken. The government kept the great majority of the money owed under the treaties, paying out only a thin trickle of interest over the years. Stripped of their homeland and cheated of their payments, the Dakota were pushed onto a shrinking strip of reservation and left hungry and desperate. Within just over a decade, that betrayal helped ignite the United States and Dakota War of 1862 and the exile of most Dakota people from Minnesota that followed. The quiet crossing downstream carries a heavy and painful history, and it deserves to be remembered honestly. Let us come back down to the creek, where the water runs on as it always has. Whatever the human history of this valley, the stream has kept flowing, cold and clear, out of its hidden springs. In recent years, people have turned a great deal of care toward keeping it that way, because a trout stream is a fragile and demanding thing. For years, the creek was clouded by silt washing out of the eroding ravines, and its trout habitat suffered for it. Restoring the water has meant restoring the whole valley around it. That restoration has been a long, patient, collaborative effort. The Minnesota Trout Unlimited chapter, working with the Department of Natural Resources in Nicollet County, rebuilt a long stretch of the creek, sloping and stabilizing its banks and adding overhead cover for the fish. Across the wider watershed, conservationists planted grassy buffers, built basins to catch runoff, and worked to heal the eroding ravines that fed silt into the water. Landowners, agencies, and volunteers all lent a hand to a project measured in years, not months. It is slow work, but the creek has answered it with clearer water and healthier fish. One of the boldest pieces of that work involved an old dam near the creek's mouth. Back in the 1950s, a low concrete dam had been built across 7 Mile Creek to keep invasive carp from swimming up out of the river. Over the decades, it aged and began to fail, and it also blocked the passage of native fish and posed a hazard in floods. So a partnership of agencies and neighbors set out to replace it with a set of rock arch rapids, a natural cascade of boulders that lets fish move freely while still holding back the carp. It is a fine example of working with a river rather than against it. The idea behind a rock arch rapids is beautifully simple. Instead of a hard concrete wall, engineers build a gentle stairway of carefully placed stone that the water tumbles down in a series of small drops. Fish can climb it, floods can pass over it safely, and there is no aging structure left to wash out. Paid for in large part by Minnesota's Outdoor Heritage Fund, the project was the fruit of years of planning and effort. It reflects a growing understanding that the healthiest streams are the ones we allow to behave like streams. The afternoon is drawing on now, and the low sun is turning the whole valley to gold. Its light comes slanting through the thinning canopy and lies in bright bars across the creek, catching the leaves that drift downstream one by one. The water murmurs over the gravel, cold and clear as ever, carrying autumn away toward the great river below. In a single short walk, we have crossed an ice age flood, an old forest, a homeland thousands of years deep, and a patient work of healing. That is the quiet gift of a place like this. Seven Mile Creek is a small stream in a hidden valley, and it holds far more than its size would ever suggest. In its cold, clear water run the springs of the deep earth, the memory of a glacial flood, the shade of the old big woods, and the long history of the people who have called this valley home. Places like this survive only because others chose to notice them, to fight the silt, to take down the old dam, and to let the creek run wild again. I hope this walk has given you a reason to seek out the quiet valleys near your own home and to care for them. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.